I didn't start using ChatGPT because I love AI. I started using it because I was out of time, out of money, and I had a baby on my hip. So this episode is about ChatGPT, but hopefully not in the way that you think, and how I use it in small, broken windows, because building a business is really difficult when you've got a baby. Let me tell you about that baby. Because I'm a single mom by choice, and if you've been watching my videos regularly, you know that I had him with my gay best friend, and I've been co-parenting with my mom, and my story here has been about IVF and about being a single mother by choice, but I'm kind of doing this little series here about how I am starting a business on my own, which, by the way, was officially incorporated this week. Thank you very much. I have a tax number. Nerd. If any of this sounds like fun, you want to hit the subscribe button, turn that notification bell on. I am usually on Instagram. If you want to talk to me about, single motherhood or big life pivots, there's a link down below to Calendly. I'm always afraid I'm saying that wrong. And you can book some time to talk with me. And if you'd also like to support the channel more directly, I have a Patreon account, and that's where I'm posting ad-free videos and a little bit of behind-the-scenes content. I actually have a video from my mom that she made on her birthday about this whole company transition time and stuff and how she feels about it, which she made on her own and didn't tell me until weeks later. I was like, Mom, I could have posted this that week, but I took a break. It was fine. I needed it. Links are always in the description, and just a bit of housekeeping. If you saw a couple of weeks ago, I had been working on a space that my mom and I share. We turned our garage into a little studio apartment, and I'm sitting in it. I've put curtains up. I bolted this baby to the wall because it's very tippy, and these are all my parents' CDs. So I'm feeling very 90s basement in here, and I'm liking it. I'm liking what we're putting together. I'll give you a tour when it's, you know what? I'll drop a video here of what it looks like as I'm editing this video. But so much has been moved to storage, and I've put up shelves out there, and I've moved furniture here, and I've condensed boxes there. And every single week my recycling is full of cardboard, but hot damn, we're getting there. Anyway, back to the point. I conceptually did not like AI for a very long time. I read the headlines, and the idea of models being trained on unconsenting authors and creators' work, not cool. But at my last job, I worked on a project that fundamentally changed how I think about AI. We were working on something for a country, I can't say who. We were working on doing some 3D scanning of the country's antiquities, ancient cities, castles, that sort of thing. And the period of time that we were working within is not one that's as well known as, say, Rome or Egypt. There are some holes in the history, and the country was talking to us about recreating what it looked like at its height. And I was having trouble finding information, and I talked to a gal that I worked with who was our AI magic genie. She was so smart about all of it. And I've actually talked to her a lot about this project that I'm working on. And she changed how I thought about AI. First of all, she said yeah, there are these models that are kind of, trained on everything, but you can also create your own models, your own little brains. And she likened them to interns. And I, in turn, pun intended, thought of AI as a puppy that needs training, very eager, you'll toss a ball and it'll bring you back a stick. Something that needs a little bit of boundaries and something that needs a little bit of teaching. And with this project in particular that I was working on at my last job, when they were asking us about recreating what rooms looked like in an ancient city, the example that I always ended up using to folks that we were hoping to work with, and when we were writing the proposal for the country, I said, imagine, we don't know what curtains looked like in this ancient bedroom. What we can do with AI is work with a historian and to capture what trade routes looked like at that time, what dyes were being used, what fabrics were being used, what curtains looked like in societies around this one, and kind of construct what possibly could be a curtain for these people, which sounds like it could be revisionist history, but that wasn't the point. The point was to kind of give a little bit of context, conceptualize responsibly with disclaimers, of course, and use known data to fill in those gaps. And so this reframed how I thought about AI, and it defined how I wanted to use it. Not as a replacement, but as a thinking assistant that works within boundaries that I give it. We'll come back to that a little bit later about like my boundaries and how I'm training those things, because I think that's really important. The irony is that even though I had opened up my mind to the possibilities of artificial intelligence, I didn't start using it until literally the day before I was let go. I didn't know I was being let go the next day, but I signed on to ChatGPT with this idea for this business, and I started asking it questions about data privacy, how AI stores information, and how it could be stored responsibly and respectfully. And man, the timing is hilarious. Like, I cannot believe I got let go the very next day. And what's important is that I didn't ask it to do the work for me. I asked it complicated questions that I could gather some information on and then do further research about. And that's how I'm using it. I am not outsourcing my thinking to a machine. It's actually helping me to better gather information, consider how I want to have it metabolized. And it makes me think harder. I have to articulate what I'm trying to do. I have to articulate how I want the research to be done. I have to articulate how I want that research given back to me. It actually refines my thinking. It clarifies my thought by causing me to have to explain it better. Which brings me to how exactly I use it. So I'm currently using ChatGPT because that is just the first thing I went towards. And I almost feel like there's kind of that sunken cost fallacy. I've worked with it so much that the idea of switching to another platform is a little bit difficult. I tried Claude and I have enjoyed that, but I don't know, I'm just kind of a little bit hooked to ChatGPT. I feel like I should expand a little bit more. So assignment number 1 for me. But what I do is I start with a very thorough prompt. I'm not going to ChatGPT and being like, tell me how to start a business. I have a general idea of how to do that. So I'm going to give it a much more fleshed out prompt. Let's say I'm considering starting a fast casual business in Anaheim, California, where I live, that specializes in breakfast foods, and I'm hoping to open it in the resort area. Really, I get down to the nitty gritty. That's not my business, although that's another business thought I have. And if I won the lottery tomorrow, I would just be starting a ton of businesses because I think it's fun. What I do is I give ChatGPT a lot of context. And then I personally, in the way that I'm using it, kind of as a business coach, I give it my background, my goals, my constraints. I've gone so far as to tell it stories about past roles I've had where I've been frustrated, or past successes that I've had that have been validating, to kind of give it a little bit of a better idea of how to talk to me and to inspire me. Here's a tip that I learned from that former coworker, my little AI genie, you know who you are. She suggested that I ask it to ask me questions. Here's my very thorough prompt. Is there anything that you think that I'm missing, or any additional context I can give you to better articulate an answer back? Let's talk about how I used it for this episode, which is very meta. I used AI to tell me how to make an episode about AI. So let's get meta, but not that meta. Ugh. I had 2 pages of notes about AI, some just general thoughts that I had as I was, walking down the street, knowing that I was going to make this episode. So I gave it 2 separate pages of notes and I said, I want to weave these together into a bullet point outline for a script. It gave me that pretty quickly. And what I did was I went through and read it like an editor. What it does is it'll break down these episodes that I'm giving to you into a couple of different sections. And a lot of times when I read those, I find them to be a little bit reiterative and not really in my voice. So I'll go through and usually I'm condensing, usually I'm calling and saying, section 2 and 3 are too alike. Let's put those together. Let's cut this out. Let's move this line here. This doesn't sound like my voice. Stop giving me directorial notes because I don't like that. I went to theater school. I can direct myself. Thank you very much. I don't always give it the final script of what I'm telling you guys because that's not really necessary. But when I'm done editing this episode, I'll take the transcript and I will upload it back to ChatGPT, because for YouTube, you have to write a description, you have to write titles and thumbnail text and a whole bunch of other stuff that for me, like, I just freeze up. It's like writing a summary for a book report. I'm not good at that. I can tell you what I think about the book. I can tell you about themes that I found. I can tell you why I love characters X, Y, or Z. But just like writing the summary is really hard. And I have better things to do with my time. So, I'll upload the transcript. I'll get a description from ChatGPT and I will go through. And again, I'm not going to just copy and paste exactly what it tells me. I'm going to read through it and make some notes and make some changes. And then I'm able to post that. Eventually, ChatGPT is going to know enough about me that it's just going to be able to replicate me. And I don't know, am I learning to love the bomb? Maybe. Have I always wanted to be a robot? Yes. So yeah, I'm using it for my YouTubing, but I'm also using it to build this business, right? I have had it fill in spreadsheets for me. I've had it do some very basic research about, like, find me some pre-seed investors, find me some accelerator programs. It gives me a starting point. It's not a final authority by any means, but I do need something to help me while I'm raising Oscar. He's 8 months old. I'm living with my 75-year-old mom. I do not have childcare. The amount of work I've been able to accomplish because of AI has been absolutely wild. I'm able to pressure test ideas quickly. I can outline things. I can put in a whole bunch of fragmented ideas that I have. And then when Oscar starts crying, I get to go and be there with him, completely present, not worried about, am I going to forget about this thought? Because I've already delegated it out. So then I get to keep moving forward without permission from some bureaucratic boss, which honestly is the whole point of this, right? And then when I'm with Oscar, I'm fully present with him. And I mean, that's what this is all about. It's not perfect. AI is not perfect. There are a lot of things that I'm concerned about. I do not like it for art generally. At my last job, we were using it to start doing like concept art for things. And there are artists who've built their whole career around concept art. That sucks. But by the same token, we did have some artists on staff who, rather than creating stupid little like background things that they didn't need to waste time doing, they could use AI to create something small and repetitive and work really hard on like the hero object or whatever. I worked in VFX and they did a lot of video game stuff. So that's what that was good for. I would be remiss not to mention the resource drain that AI takes, and I don't have a solve for that. I try to be really responsible and I try to be super efficient with my usage of ChatGPT. There have been times where I've said to myself, I'll just go ask Chat that. And then I realized it's something that I could very easily Google, which of course now Google pops AI to the top. But there are easier ways for me to go through a Wikipedia article and be like, that actor is that height, because these are important things to know. I don't use it for that kind of like dumb, mindless stuff. I'm really using it to refine thought and to ask questions about business and stuff. When it comes to historical fact, AI does hallucinate. Sometimes it makes its own things up if it doesn't know or doesn't know where to search. So I wouldn't go to it for a fact-finding mission, but I would use it the way I'm using it, obviously, because that's how I'm using it. I would love to have a team that I could bounce a lot of these ideas off of. And I will someday. But right now I'm broke. And when I do have a team, I want them to have the same ethos that I do about this technology, that it is something that can help you work better, but it's not a replacement for us. The big reason I wanted to talk about this week is because I think it's really important for women to learn how to use AI. The last version of ChatGPT had a reputation of being incredibly validating. You hear these horror stories about men falling in love with it.
Hello, I'm here.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Samantha.
I'm sure there are women who do too, but I do find ChatGPT to be very validating, but I don't read everything it's giving me as fact. But that said, it does cut through some of this internalized hesitation that I carry as a woman, stuff that society has like pushed down on you. I gaslight myself sometimes into like, this isn't a good idea. Why am I going after this? And so I'll ask ChatGPT, hey, we haven't run any math on this. Am I a total idiot in pursuing this company and this idea? And it comes back and it's like, no, you've been really thoughtful. We've gone through all of these different things. Think about all of the different questions you've asked me about XYZ. And that is so incredibly helpful. I don't think I would have moved forward on this idea as much as I have if not for this tool. It helps me to see where I'm getting in my own way. Because women use these tools less, they are being trained on men. And they're being trained on the way that men think, which is not always bad, but it's different. We've seen this pattern before. Here's some fun information I learned on crash test dummies. Did you know that the crash test dummies currently used to represent women by like literally the entire world? Like I thought, Europe would be advanced about these things. Nah, it's a male crash test dummy that they just glued breasts on. Women have entirely different bodies. And so the Trump administration, I can't believe I'm going to give them credit for anything, but they've moved forward on using an actual female-bodied crash test dummy. But the one that they're pushing forward to use is based on like the smallest percentile of women. So because female crash test dummies are not used, did you know that women are like way more likely to die in car crashes because they just don't know? And that these female crash test dummies are like not going to be used until next year still. It's 2027. Neutral data is very often not neutral. And when it comes to drug testing, women are far more likely to be over-medicated because drug testing is based on men. There are like countless examples of these sort of things. And I don't want this new technology to come along and think this is exactly how humans think, because a majority of the people using product are straight men. My feeling, and the feeling of countless bright minds out there, is that if you don't use these tools, you are going to be behind. Opting out doesn't stop the future from happening. But look, if you think differently, please let me know. Convince me otherwise. Hit me up in the comments. And furthermore, how are you guys using AI? Michael, my baby daddy, he loves languages. It's wild how quickly he picks languages up. He's actually using ChatGPT to help him learn Georgian, because why not? I think we need to build systems that respect our reality. And I think good people need to use the tools to train them to be good tools. I want to hear your thoughts. So hit me up below. Thanks for listening. If you've made it this far, hit me up with a little computer emoji in the comments. I think that would make ChatGPT happy. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Oh, and come back next week because I made an irreversible decision. I didn't just incorporate, I did something financially irresponsible, some would say, but I think it's just next level. Come back next week, hear all about it. You showing us that crawling position? Are you proud of yourself and frustrated at the same time? Me too, always. Yeah! That's very good!